after Donald Trump won the presidential election, everybody had their own take on why that happened, and much of the time, everybody's take has to do with their own personal biases. A lot of people said that he won because of social justice people calling people racist, and people don't want to be called racist anymore, and it's all of their fault, and so the left has to shut up and be silent and, mind their own business for 4 years and let the true liberals take over and whatever, just project their own biases onto the reason as to why Donald Trump won. Others said he won because Hillary Clinton was just a terrible candidate and not appealing in the way that she needed to be to win that election. Others said it was because of the Electoral College and the way that the voting was set up so that the popular vote was discounted when it shouldn't have been. Others said it was Bernie Sanders' fault for dividing the Democrats. So there's a whole range of blame to go around. I personally was wrong about the election. I thought Donald Trump was going to lose, but he ended up winning. If you just want to see things with rose-tinted glasses because it makes you feel like Trump might win, and then you'll feel better about your life, and then you can complain about everything being rigged. And why weren't they talking about Hillary laughing at the gays? Good luck with that, because you are losing not only this election, but your alignment with reality.
Wrong.
National debt of the United States.
You're wrong. You're wrong.
Playing a really...
And I think that he appealed to people's prejudices about immigration and fears of Mexicans and fear of Islam. He used a lot of identity politics, a very divide and conquer mentality, and just bullied his way through. And people appreciate strength, and they appreciate people who just tell it like it is, even if the way that they tell it is just massive douchebaggery. They still like it in its own way. And that was the appeal of Bernie Sanders. He told it like it was, but Hillary Clinton just seemed like a fake. Like that she doesn't really have any strong convictions. Keen on half measures, keen on just continuing things that Obama had done, but without really adding much to it. She didn't really have much to offer. She wasn't very exciting. And I definitely felt that way, like I was not jazzed about Hillary. But I said you should support her because the alternative Trump is worse. I totally stand by that. Some people said to me like, oh, you fucking sellout. You sold out all your principles to stand by Hillary. But I think when you see Hillary versus Trump, you have to make a decision because it's a very radical choice between somebody who's totally extreme on the right and then somebody who's just milquetoast, kind of dull on the left. And I would have made that same choice again, but not in an excited way, not in a like, hurrah, vote for Hillary, because I just didn't feel jazzed about her at all. She's better than the alternative. And so that was, lesser of two evils. You've got no choice but to choose the less shitty person, unless they're both equally shit, and they weren't. Trump was shitter. He's worse. He's been a terrible president so far. He's failed at basically everything that he's tried to do. The left was already disillusioned with him, but now the right's finally catching up and saying, alright, this guy does fucking suck. But anyways, I was wrong. He won. I was incorrect. So in the aftermath of the election, the Bernie Sanders element of the left is still fighting it out with the establishment Hillary Clinton Democrat wing about what is the step forward, what can people do. Now, I found on Facebook amongst my left-wing compatriots that whenever I defended Bernie Sanders on the grounds that I thought he was the most progressive candidate, he wants Medicare for all, he wants stronger regulations that he's very clear about, he wants massive jobs programs, he wants all of the wonderful democratic socialism that I appreciate and that I want, and he's not one for half measures, he just straight up says, these are the things that we need. Whenever I came out in support of Bernie Sanders, somebody would inevitably call me a Bernie bro, and someone would always mention, oh, Bernie Sanders actually stands for dudes who are white and middle class and whatever. So there was a lot of identity politics coming from the Hillary people, really, saying you can't just appreciate or support Bernie on his progressive merits. It has to be something to do with the fact that you're white or that you're male. And if you were really left-wing, you would support the first woman, even though she's in bed with the big banks. Even though she doesn't believe in Medicare for all, she just wants to expand and continue Obamacare. Even if she takes massive donations, even if she seems like a fake individual who flip-flops all the time and only supported gay marriage in 2013, which is absurd, who supported the crime bill in the 90s, and who generally is a very middle-of-the-road establishment candidate, who would be better than Trump, but you have to support her because she's a woman. No. I supported Bernie Sanders. I don't care if he's male or white or whatever. He had the fucking policies that I agreed with. But every time I try to bring it up, I get called a Bernie bro. Or I get told I hate Hillary. Or, I'm bitter against something to do with the Clintons. When actually, I just don't believe in their policies as much. And the number one thing that I blamed for the loss of the election was the DNC, for being extremely short-sighted and for having an exclusionary attitude, where they basically said, okay, if you're a woman, then we want you and you're on our side because Hillary's on our side. And if you're a minority, we want you on our side, even though our candidate has called you super predators in the past and supported the crime bill. Just forget that. And despite the fact that Bernie Sanders' policies would be better for minorities, forget about that too, you can come support us. But if you're white and male, you can fuck off. We don't want you. And this was mostly disseminated by Hillary supporters, and that trend continues. And I gotta say, the idea that you don't want somebody's vote because they're white, or you want to tell them to get fucked because they're white and male, is absurd. It's ridiculous. You should be trying to appeal to as many people as you possibly can. So you should be saying to the Bernie people, like, I know you love Bernie, but over here we've got a great alternative. We've got something better. But instead they just said, Bernie bros, Bernie bros, Bernie bros. And I frankly found that really off-putting. It made me kind of like hate the Hillary wing. It made me despise Sarah Silverman, who was like,
can I just say to the Bernie or bust people, you're being ridiculous.
fuck you. Why should they support you if you treat them with contempt? You need to appeal to voters, not alienate them. That's just driving them in a direction where they're not going to support you or help you, or they'll try to help you, but they'll be like kind of reluctant about it. That's certainly how I felt about Hillary Clinton. And that exclusionary attitude, whether it's like you're trying to exclude minorities or whether you're trying to just exclude white people because you decide that you don't want them and they're automatically racist or automatically misogynist or whatever, that's an absurd idea and it's ridiculous. And that's just an easy way to lose. You should be trying to appeal to people, not their prejudices, not their anger, not their hatreds, not their racism and bigotry and sexism, etc., but to their aspirations and the things that they actually want in life. You know, job policies, economic ideas, healthcare, and opportunity. You should be trying to appeal to people with those kinds of things, not just saying, fuck you, we don't want you. And the reason I'm talking about this is because this whole firestorm of fighting between the progressives and the kind of middle-of-the-road liberals has come up again because Bernie Sanders went on a unity tour with Tom Perez, who's the new DNC chairman. I'm very happy to see Debbie Wasserman Schultz has gone because she was just extremely dismissive of any progressive concerns. And Tom Perez apparently was not Bernie's first choice for the head of the DNC because he's more of an establishment type figure, but I appreciate the fact that he was trying to reach out to the progressive wing of, I can't say the Democratic Party because Bernie Sanders is an independent, but to that group of people who would be much more likely to vote Democratic if they found any reason to do so. And I have to mention Kristi Winters here because Kristi is incredibly pro-Hillary. Like very stridently pro-Hillary and pro the DNC and pro the Democratic Party. And when she gets into fights with people on Facebook about this, she inevitably ends up saying some shit about Bernie bros and just being extremely dismissive. But my question would be like, why should people support the DNC? Why should people support the Democratic Party? If this party is corrupt and it's just tied to special interests and lobbyists, and it's extremely dismissive of an entire swath of progressives, why the fuck should they support these people? They've been treated with nothing but contempt. You should try to appeal to voters, not just say we don't want you.
Hillary Clinton will always be there for you, and just remember, there's a special place in hell for women who don't help each other.
There's a special place in hell for people who don't vote for Hillary Clinton. If that's the case, I think a lot of people would just prefer to go to hell. An incredibly weird thing about the strident support of the DNC is it's kind of like saying to the voters, you have to appeal to the DNC. You've got to go to the DNC and say like, hey guys, we're sorry, we're going to vote for you now, we're going to get in line. Rather than the DNC saying, alright, we haven't listened to progressive concerns. We've been kind of waffly on some of the key issues, and we really need to just be clear about what our agenda is and what we want to do moving forward to take on the Republicans and give a message of hope that everybody can be involved in. They're not saying that. Instead, they're saying these voters have to get in line because they didn't support us in the way that they should. Shame on you, shame, shame, shame. And I think a lot of those voters will probably be within their rights to just say, fuck you, I'm sitting out of the next election. You are the people who are supposed to be appealing to us, not the other way around. And the reason that Bernie is so popular is because he has values and principles. That's what people want, that's what people like. A lot of Trump supporters thought that Trump had values and principles. He didn't really. And a lot of us on the left could see that he didn't have those principles, but that's what people want. And progressives can see he actually cares about the people, he actually cares about the policies he puts forth. These are the things that he actually believes, that he has been consistent on over the years, and that's what people want. They want genuine people. And that's why they support him, and they didn't really support Hillary, though they got forced to do so because there was no choice. And you're saying to these people who support Bernie because they believe that he believes what he's saying, you're saying to them, we have contempt for you because you're not the kind of voters we want. You're not the kind of people we like. Well, that's a terrible decision, and that's just going to help lead to another defeat when you put up like fucking Cory Booker or some other establishment candidate, and then people are not excited or jazzed. But I know that the equation will be, hopefully Trump is bad enough that people just vote for this establishment shill. Which could well be the case. You know, in 3 years, Trump may have fucked things up so badly that the people will have no choice but to vote for Cory Booker or whomever. But I will say, that equation didn't work this time, did it? It didn't pan out. So to put all of your eggs in that basket is just lunacy. I think the best next approach would be to actually try to appeal to the progressive wing of the party, instead of telling them to get fucked. And I gotta say, on that, Tom Perez, you know, made a pretty cool move doing this unity tour, but I saw an interview with Bernie and Tom Perez, and Tom Perez reminded me of why people hate the Democratic establishment and why they just really can't stand many aspects of the Democratic Party and the DNC. So in this interview, the interviewer asked him a very straightforward question.
Is the DNC on board with Medicare for all single payer, Tom?
Well, you know, we want to make sure that health care is a right. It's not a privilege. And that's why we fought for the Affordable Care Act. That's why we want to continue to expand it. We want to make sure that everybody, and the Affordable Care Act has made tremendous progress. We have more work to do. And I think the unity, Chris, that we've shown in the recent efforts by...
You see, that right there is what people hate about the DNC, is the fact that you cannot answer a question straight. If someone says to you, do you support A? Well, we've got lots of really good ideas in the area of E. It's like, do you support A? Well, we've been looking at G and H, and they're really good. But do you fucking support A? Yes or no? And that interview, for me, was eventually enraging that Tom Perez could not answer a simple question. Bernie just says, yes, I'm for Medicare for all. Tom Perez says, we're working on Obamacare and we're really expanding it. That's not an answer to the question that was asked. That's just political talking points. And then later in the interview...
Do you think it's important, as the senator sitting next to you just said, to say the ruling class, his words, of this country, are basically screwing average folks?
Well, listen, you know, when we put hope on the ballot, Chris, we win. When we allow our opponents to put fear on the ballot, we don't do so well. I believe that an economy has to work for everyone to be...
Hillary Clinton, no, this is my point. Hillary Clinton ran on hope. She ran on hope. It was a very hopeful message. And the point is, do you have to name the enemy? That's my question. Do you have to say, these are the people that are screwing you?
Well, listen, I think you're creating a false choice, Chris. What we have to do as Democrats is to articulate very clearly that Donald Trump's...
No, you fucking lost. That's why Chris Hayes starts kind of laughing. Because he's just saying these canned, regurgitated talking points. When we have a message of hope, we win. When we do derp, we win. When we go high and they go low, derp, we win. But you fucking lost. And the Democratic Party has been losing a lot recently. They've been losing all over America. They've been losing in the Senate. They've been losing in the Congress. They've lost at the presidential level. No one is interested in your talking points about how a message of hope means you win if you're losing. And that's the infuriating thing. Bernie doesn't do those talking points. He says, we done fucked up. We gotta fix some of this shit. We've gotta actually be more receptive to the needs of the people and what the people want. We can't just be in our ivory tower dictating to the voters what they have to like, what they have to enjoy. And we can't keep just dividing people up into like, you're an acceptable voter, you're an unacceptable voter, special place in hell for you. Fuck all of that. And we have to stop putting the establishment in front of the actual people and what they actually want. But Tom Perez and the DNC, they're stuck in this bubble. They just regurgitate these prepackaged ideas, and no one is jazzed by it, no one is excited by it or interested in it, except like a very specific group of people who are fanatical about the DNC, partly because they hate Bernie. And Kristi sent me an article and a video to have a look at because she said it might help my preparation for this video. The article is just somebody bitching about the fact that Bernie exists, but there needs to be an outlet for more progressive ideals, and that has to exist. And just like have allegiance to the DNC and the Democratic Party, which has treated you with quite a lot of contempt, is not enough of an answer to just fall in line and say, oh, Bernie's just going to give up and say to all of his voters, hey, go support the corrupt, shitty DNC for less progressive policies. That would be a betrayal of the people who supported him and the reasons why they supported him. And the second one was a relatively nuanced conversation among some hosts on MSNBC, which I will link below. Don't really have too much to say about that, except it was less rabidly anti-Bernie than I expected. All I can say is, I can predict another surprise loss in 3 years or so, unless the DNC and the Democratic Party starts being a bit more receptive to the complaints of the grassroots. Because if they had had overwhelming grassroots support, no matter what to do with the Electoral College and the popular vote, I think they may well have been able to pull out a win. Whatever their skin color, you need to appeal to them in some way. It's not going to be impossible to win, it's just going to be more difficult. And I can see the establishment making the same mistakes because they have tunnel vision basically and they're in a bubble. And I just want to put this out here now as a marker so that perhaps in 3 years I can look back and say, I semi-predicted this. And then people say, that Tim, he's a smart man. Anyways, I'll link to that article and the video in the comments. Don't have too much more to say about that right now. And I hope I haven't burned all of my bridges with Kristi Winters. But Kristi, stop calling everyone Bernie bros and try to engage. Not too many people actually give that much of a fuck about the Democratic establishment. I'm sorry to say, they care more about principles and ideals. And I think I'm going to be with the people with the principles and the ideals every single time, rather than the people just preaching party unity when there's nothing to really get unified behind except defeating people who are shit, who you're not even defeating right now because you keep losing.